Let's fix your rotated hips. My name is Gillette. I'm a certified personal trainer and a certified nutritionist. By far, the most common cause for rotated hips is posture, all right? So a lot of people, when they're sitting down, they're gonna be sitting, maybe cross-legged, there, they got one leg over here. And so oftentimes, when you're not sitting square, right? Straight ahead, good posture. We're gonna go into this a little bit later. But if you're not sitting square, then you can get a rotated hip, right? So think about this, okay? This hip here is a lot forward of this hip. And a lot of people, believe it or not, spend time in this kind of posture for long periods out of the day. You might be in a swivel chair, you might be sitting on a couch, you might even be driving. But the thing is that when you add up the hours that you're actually sitting and not sitting well, then you can get rotated hips. And a lot of people are gonna chase the muscles. Don't worry, we're gonna get into that in the next video. And going after the muscles is smart, but the muscles are only an accessory. They only really matter after we've corrected the cause. And 9 times out of 10, in my experience working with actual clients and getting them to change their rotation in their hips, the culprit is posture. So let's go over again the pen test, right? That's where you bring out the pens and you put them on the front of your hips and you look down and you see if there's a difference. And if the pens are not square, like this, then you have a rotated hips. And for our purposes right now, we're saying a rotated pelvis, either to the left or to the right. And so what I want you to do with yourself is find the common positions that you're in a lot of the day. It might be at your office, it may be at home, but wherever it is, you actually just need to see and observe what you're actually doing. And oftentimes you're gonna find that you have an uneven sitting pattern. And the problem with going after muscles is twofold. The first is that if you're sitting down in an uneven posture for an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours out of the day, do you really think a 2-minute stretch or a 3-minute stretch is really going to be able to compete with an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours? Probably not. Now, I have actually seen some people who were able to correct so-called the muscles so that they're even on both sides of the pelvis. But you know what those people did? They went right back into that uneven pattern because guess what? That feels natural to them. So that's the thing. You're not going to notice that this feels natural to you or normal to you. Once I had a client who measured for rotation in her hips, and there was a massive rotation. I would say the pens were about at least an inch difference, and she couldn't tell, right? It just felt normal to her. So the second reason why you don't want to typically work with muscles first, even if you can correct the muscles, people still prefer that uneven position because it feels natural to them. So that can still affect like your spine, your hips, and your knees, and they can hurt from that. So you might have normal muscles, but your whole movement pattern and what feels natural and comfortable and also habitual for you, guess what you're gonna do? You're just gonna do what you always do, right? So that's why we have to go over the original cause, which I said 9 times out of 10, probably actually more than that, is going to be the posture and how you sit. Or it actually, for some of you, it's going to be how you stand. Or for some of you, it's going to be how you lie down. Some of you, it could be a combination, but usually there's going to be one big factor that takes the cake. And so I want you to investigate how you're sitting, how you're standing, how you're lying down. Now, even if you can't fully identify what's going on, that's all right. If you follow the solutions with what we're going to do today, I guarantee you, not only are you going to correct your rotated hips, you'll probably in the long run end up improving the muscles that contribute to your rotated hips. Now, to be honest with you, they may or may not be fully corrected, but that's why we're going to fully correct them in the next video. So don't worry. What do we do about sitting? This is the key with sitting. Now, I've said earlier in the video, we got to sit square here, right? But square, as I've observed in my book, is not the square that I see in a lot of my clients' books, right? So what that means basically for us is we generally, when we're sitting down, and this, I get it, this is not a normal seat. I want to reshoot this video here. It's not a normal seat. Imagine I have a backrest. Imagine I'm just in a regular chair, right? We want to make sure the thighs are pretty much straight out. If they're a little bit to the outside, it's not a big deal. The key is this, though. The knees have to line up like this. You cannot have one knee ahead of the other unless you have a bony leg length difference. There's about 1% of you that have that. If you do have that, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, follow the advice, please. You cannot have this leg forward. And you might think, well, who the hell does that? A lot of people do it. Trust me. I've seen them do it in swivel chairs, all kinds of chairs. People like to squirm around, you know? Stop squirming! Okay? That's your grade school instructor trying to, bringing back bad memories for you. So, sorry about that. We have to have these lined up, okay? Similarly, you should also typically have your shoulders lined up. That can also, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm in my chair. Some people are you could technically be like this and rotated. I don't want you rotated here. A lot of people are on the couch, you know, oh, I'm just gonna rotate here. Shoulders square, here, knees are square. If you do that, when you sit down, you will correct sitting as a culprit, if it is a culprit for you, for your rotated hips, all right? Let's go into standing. So there's a lot of people that stand for long periods of the day. If you work in a restaurant, if you work in a department store, if you're a clerk at a convenience store, you're gonna probably be on your feet quite a bit. So what a lot of people will end up doing is, I'm gonna stand up here. They'll end up doing this, okay? So they're gonna go like, okay, this is here. This is what PRI, Postural Restoration Institute, don't worry about them. They call the left AIC pattern. This left hip will go forward here, okay? This right hip stays back. And if you do that long enough, this is actually a very, very energy efficient position for people. Some people will kind of cross their legs as well, so they might be rotated. And so I'll be honest with you, I'm not that concerned if you're rotated to one side and then as long as you rotate to the other side. But most people honestly do not do that. They're not calibrating, oh, I was this way for 2.5 hours, so I better do it the other way for 2.5 hours. Later on, you can do that if you don't have rotated hips. So that is good to be conscious of. But for the most part, we just need to be straight, okay? Feet need to be together, right? So again, demonstrate this. I don't like editing people here, okay? Actually, I kind of like editing. I just don't have a ton of time for it. Feet got to be together and the hips got to be together. We shouldn't have this. Remember, check with the pens on here. One pen's ahead of the other. Rotate it. Make sure they're level here, right? Feet are level, square. We don't want to have one foot in front of the other. And otherwise, we'll be good. So standing is fairly straightforward. It's a little bit more simple than sitting. For some of you, the rotated hips is going to come from lying down. So this is what happens, and this happens with women a lot, but there's a ton of men that have. I got a big butt. I got a good butt, and it can not always great for the hips, though. I can tell you, for alignment of the hips. All right, but typically some people have such wide hips because you see this pelvis, instead of it being centered, Notice how it's rotated to the left, right? Now the issue is that the larger hips you have, the easier it is for those hips, once this leg drops, to rotate forward. That's why, if you have larger hips, you may need 2 pillows in between your legs. But typically for a lot of people, you just need 1 pillow in between the leg. That's enough to correct it. Some people, this becomes normal for them because this gets stretched out. So it feels natural for them. And they're like, oh, and this feels weird. But guess what? This is where you got to be if you have rotated hips. Okay. Similarly, on the other side, some people sleep on the right side, and they're going to do this. So they'll have a right rotated pelvis. Okay. So they're going to need something. Ideally, this thigh should be parallel with the ground, right? You're sleeping here, good to go. And sometimes you see just funky sleepers. I'm like, oh, show me the position you sleep in. And I'm just like, how do you sleep in that? They're sleeping on their stomachs with pillows underneath, so you just got to make sure that these hips are not rotated relative to your legs, relative to up here. And if you do that, you're going to be okay. You do kind of sometimes may want to watch out for up the shoulders. I'd rather you be kind of square. That's usually not an issue, but I have seen it sort of, I would say, be a secondary contributor to rotated pelvis. Similarly, we don't want to be too far rotated like here. So lying down, just got to make sure we're square. Okay, good. I'm checking my audio. Just make sure we're square. Really, what we went through is if you have a pure pelvic rotation, which is one of 3 possibilities if you have rotated hips. They are, the first is you have a pure pelvic rotation. The second is when you have a pure abdominal rotation. The third is when you have a pelvic and abdominal rotation going on. So don't worry, this stuff will come in useful for some of the later corrections that we're going to make. But most people are probably going to have a pure pelvic rotation, and this solution and the solutions we went through today is going to cover their bases and ideally get you out of pain. So if you have any questions or comments about the treatment we went through today, or questions and comments about rotated hips in general, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for watching.
You're driving me crazy.